Okay. Well, we'll call the meeting to order. Welcome, everybody, this morning. And if you could, let's please rise and we'll take a moment of reflection before we begin the duties. Thank you. And I'm going to ask, is there any declaration of pecuniary interest or the general nature thereof? One council. Seeing none, it can be declared at any time if it does arise unexpectedly. Ms. Noble, can you give us an update on the virtual part of this meeting, please?
Thank you. And through you, Mayor Eccles, before I begin, at any point, if you get disconnected, you can dial 1-647-558-0588 and enter the ID for this meeting, which is 891-5626-2480. Both member of council and staff have been briefed on the various features of the Zoom meeting software and will be raising their hands physically to speak. For members of the public, if you require any technical assistance, please send a chat message to myself, Ashley Noble, Communications Coordinator, and I will attempt to assist you. It should be noted for members of the public that this meeting is taking place across two meeting platforms, both on Zoom as well as being live streamed on YouTube. Public participation, if any, must be done through Zoom and cannot be done through YouTube at this time.
Thank you, Ashley. Brings us down to number 4, delegations. Is Mr. Siegel joining us virtually today? And is he with us, Ashley? Tell him to get here soon because the beeper, the clock is running. There we go.
There we go.
Good morning, Mr. Siegel. Welcome.
Thank you for having me this morning. Should I just jump right into my presentation?
Well, Jamie's got a clock here for you. We've got 10 minutes on you, and the delay there, you've lost 5 seconds already. So yes, please join us. Oh, yes, go ahead. The floor is yours, sir.
Could I have the first slide, please? Okay, maybe not. Anyways, my name is Daniel Siegel.
Sorry, Daniel. Yes, Daniel, we are just pulling it up quickly.
Okay.
I won't start your time until it's up. Don't worry.
Very good.
There you are. I think we have, we have it up there now.
Perfect. Thanks a lot.
You're ready to go.
Okay, so my big hairy goal here is to help solve the housing crisis in Ontario by supplying affordable houses because I've determined that no one else will. I'm specifically addressing home ownership. A lot of upper tier, even CMHC funding is geared towards rental solutions to the housing crisis. I very much believe that the solution lies in home ownership, not in rental. I won't get into this here, but later if you want to have a chat, I could go into why that is. And therefore, I've put together a model and I've presented it to maybe about 50 or 60 other municipalities, and I've had about similar amounts of conversations with executive staff of councils across the province to share this model. And it's developed a little bit, but basically the main tenets of why I believe home ownership is the solution to the housing crisis and not rentals basically lies in the fact that Canada is based on pride of ownership of their houses, in addition to preferential treatment for primary residents when it comes to taxes and other issues. The goal here is to build entry-level housing. This has only really been done twice in Canadian history, in the 1920s to the 1940s, and then again in the 1980s. And I think it's time that we realize that the engine for this construction needs to be turned on again, because there's a lack of affordable houses. And so with that, my goal here is to work with municipalities to build affordable houses for people to buy that are sold equal to or less than the number as defined by Bill 23, as what is defined as an affordable house in your municipality. In West Grey, that number is $352,000 or less. And I accomplished this through a bunch of means, and I could go into that in further detail. But just for now, the target market here are the newlyweds and the nearly deads, as well as temporary workers. So if I could go to the next slide, please. The houses that are going to be built here in this model are prefabricated 2-bedroom, 1-bath units. They're energy efficient, they're innovative, they could be stackable. They could be built for different purposes. So if you have an elderly person in there or somebody who needs accessible living arrangements, that can be built into the product before it's delivered to the consumer. If we go to the next slide, please. The idea here is that it's not about building one or two houses. The idea here is to build whole subdivisions of affordable houses so that you build a compact community, a place where when you go on vacation, you could have your neighbor take care of your dog. We all know that in a condo or even high density living situations, you don't necessarily have that sense of community. And I think that's what's important. I know from my experience, when I got my first house, it ended up being cheaper to pay a mortgage than to pay a rent. And I believe that has gone to the wayside over the last 15 years. And I think what's needed is building of these units at scale, similar to what was done in the 80s and the 40s, and that can't be done alone. The main difference between my model and everyone else's, frankly, is everyone wants to do it, but no one's doing it. When I was talking to the mayor of Newmarket, he said, Daniel, you know, I like your model, but I don't like the fact that it's a lottery. And so what differentiates my model from others is we're doing a land lease to separate the value of the land from the value of the house, in addition to doing a community land trust to ensure that the equity in the building is maintained for future generations. So you might buy the house below market, but you're also, when you sell it, you're going to share the profit with the community land trust to ensure that future generations or future owners are able to benefit from that low price. So you don't get a bunch of speculators coming in and just buying the entire subdivision. If they're operated as a rental property, it generates a 10% IRR. Let's go to the next slide, please. And finally, I guess these solutions could be built on serviced or unserviced land. They're sold with carry-on warranties. They're stackable for higher density. And this may be one of many solutions to the housing crisis, but I was reading an article last night that, surprise, surprise, the developments that were slated to be built in 2025 are actually being mothballed and things aren't getting built. One last thing about Bill 23, the goal there is to build 1.5 million houses by 2031. The only caveat here that I have to say is that it's not enough just to build a bunch of more McMansions that are going up. It really has to be this entry-level house. Upper tier municipalities are responsible for everything from rent geared to income, right till from transitional housing right up to rent geared to income. And in the market, developers are supposed to carry the rest of that weight. And frankly, I don't think that's happening or will happen because the numbers barely work for entry-level houses, and they really only work if a municipality is on board. And so my ask here is let's sit down and figure out how we could build this. What I need from the municipality is an open-mindedness to take on a land lease for an affordable housing community. So what that means is the municipality would benefit through municipal taxes as well as lease payments from houses on the leased land. And in exchange for that, they're going a long ways to creating affordable housing in the community. And through a land trust, we're able to ensure that we don't get a bunch of flippers coming in, buying all these lots, holding them for 3 years, and then selling them at twice of what they bought them for. So that concludes my presentation. I'd love for this presentation to be referred to staff for a report so that I could go into greater details about what this actually means, what obligations there are, and how it won't impact your operating or capital budgets. With that, I'm here for any questions that you may have, and appreciate the time you've given me to make this presentation.
Thank you, Daniel. And a few minutes. Would you take any questions? If there are any, I'm not suggesting that anybody has any, but council, anyone? Councillor Shea, Jeff?
Thanks for your presentation. How many of these houses or communities have you built to date?
Well, my background is doing laneway houses and garden suites. And frankly, a laneway house or a garden suite is probably 3 times as complicated as one of these houses. And the reason for that is they're all prefabricated. They're 95% complete when they come off the factory floor, and then they're put into place on helical piles. So I've been doing these since 2020, but frankly, they're much simpler than the type of projects that I've been doing. The big difference in these communities is that I'm not reinventing the wheel here. There's other municipalities in North America who've been doing these types of projects and have had success, and I'm really only just following in their footsteps, copying what they did well.
Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Eccles, and through you to Daniel, and thank you. Good morning. How do you get a conventional mortgage on a leased lot of land? How are you working around that, out of curiosity?
That's a great question. So there's one FSCO approved lender in Ontario that's able to do it. The caveat is that the land has to be owned by a government, a level of government. So if you and I were to set up our land lease community, it would be near to impossible to get a leasehold mortgage. This lender could do a traditional 95% loan to value, so long as the land is owned by a municipality.
Okay, just briefly, just a follow-up. So I think that's fantastic, but I'm hesitant to put all my eggs in one basket. And I feel that that's almost like it's someone has the ultimate right to basically determine what the rates are, if you will. So, you know, it's not a competitive market with only one source, but that's just a food for thought there.
When I spoke to them, their rates were equivalent to any of the 5 major banks. I think what differentiates them from everyone else is that they're just used to doing these types of mortgages, whereas the TDs, RBCs of the world tend to shy away from something like this because it's difficult for them to go in when there's no land in the equation.
Anyone else? Councillor Hutchison.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Daniel, for your presentation. When I look at this concept, it reminds me a little bit of sort of our trailer park concept, where you have trailers you bring in, only they're obviously, you know, prefabricated. You just bring them in, put them on a slab or whatever. So it for me, it sounds familiar, but just interesting in the IRR. Can you explain that a little bit more in terms of what you're referring to there in terms of how that 10% IRR works over 30 years?
So to your first point, it's reminiscent of a trailer park only in that it's a bunch of homeowners trying to find a very simple product. And I think that that's really the point here, is that we're looking for housing. We're not looking for fancy houses. We're looking for affordable houses that people could take pride in. And I think that's important. When I was talking to the mayor of Brant, he said he grew up in a trailer park and he thought that they needed more of them, because I know in BC, the trailer parks have all been overrun with people looking to find affordable houses. And if they don't live in a trailer park, they might be living in a tent in a park somewhere that isn't sanctioned. So I think that having options beyond supportive housing are important. And then to your question about the internal rate of return on a 30-year pro forma of these, what I would do is I just take an equivalent 2-bedroom, 1-bath unit and assess the rent on that and project that over a 30-year term and figure out the internal rate of return of those future cash flows. The salvage value here was, I think, negligible, only because these types of units would probably require a major overhaul after 30 years. But that's how I got my internal rate of return.
Anything else? Well, thank you very much, Daniel.
Thank you for having me.
We will take this under consideration and see what we can come up with.
That would be great.
All right.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Okay. It didn't go beep, Jamie, so I take it that we were right on time. 3.5 minutes over, right? Interesting concept. Anything further on that? We'll take a look at it. Doug.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's an interesting concept, and I know as we're looking at the land that we have, parcel of land surrounding the police station, it may be just, I know staff is looking at different alternatives for around there, and this might be something to add to the basket to look at. Some way that we as a municipality can help a little bit with the housing crisis and getting people into affordable, obtainable starter homes, almost back to the old wartime house style of construction. And with the municipality involved, there might be some return on that investment of holding onto that property for the municipality for years to come. So I think it's something that we should explore anyway, just to as opposed to just selling all that land to a developer. Just a thought.
Anything else? Just one thing, and I'd look at our director of finance. Any problem on sole sourcing a project like this? Under our purchasing, disposal, all of that.
Yeah, it wouldn't probably, you'd probably, with our current purchasing value, you'd probably need to go to our peer tender with the dollars. I wouldn't anticipate involved in that type of a program.
So it's certainly not as simple just handing the keys over to Daniel and saying, go to work. Michelle, please.
Thank you. And under the Municipal Act, we'd have to be cautious around bonusing a business as well, which is another thing. But I've made a note here related to land lease options when we come back with the report related to the police station lands. Maybe there's something that can be considered. Generally speaking, in our world, municipalities don't take on the role of affordable housing. We usually defer that to the county, but it doesn't mean the concept isn't something that could be brought forward when we look at the police lands for council consideration.
Thank you. should be comfortable just with having that in as direction for some follow-up report coming or comments on the presentation. And Councillor Townsend was mentioning one portion of land. There's a few other ones around the municipality. Yes, it me. Okay. So we'll have that and direction for comments on the presentation for council meeting in the future. Okay. All right, move on. Public meetings. None that we're aware of. Jamie? Comment period. Anybody that's in the audience, comment of anything that's on the agenda today? You'll have 2 minutes at the microphone. Anybody wants to? Nobody in the audience. Is there anybody online, Ashley? There's a comment this morning. Okay. Unfinished business. None that I'm aware of, that Jamie's aware of. Adoption of minutes. We have 2 sets of minutes there. The regular council meeting of November the 5th and the special council meeting of November the 8th. We have a motion to adopt those minutes. Moved by Deputy Mayor Hutchison, seconded by Councillor Townsend. Thank you, Tom. Doug? Any comments or omissions on that motion? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Committee and board reports. Didn't have any in, Jamie. Correspondence. We have correspondence 10.1.1 from Roma. Call for 2025 delegation requests. You can see our CEO's pen over there, just ready to, anybody have any thoughts? Was from my perspective, from the mayor's chair, wondered about MTO. And that would be around our proposal of crosswalks through the connecting link in Durham. We've had some comments on that and how that might be approached. And the other one is on lighted intersections and the capacity around that and or the lighting that they use on lighted intersections. It was one that I thought, see if we could make that application. Anything else, Tom?
Well, should we continue to beat the drum on our desperate need for assistance in our infrastructure, roads and bridges and all that wonderful stuff, including water and sewer? So I think, I know we've been there, but I think just continually going back to the table when this is opera, I think is an ideal opportunity to keep doing it. I know everybody else will be doing it, but maybe create something around that. Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think we're alone, but I might as well stand and yell with the masses. Councillor Hutchison. Doug?
Yeah, I agree. I think we should continue to hammer away about funding, especially with our housing demands that's coming forward. I think it's important that the government knows that, we're under a lot of stress when it comes to water and sewers. And then there's the whole bridge thing that we deal with. So I think it's worthwhile continue to keep hammering away at it. And with the hope someday they'll make some changes, but we'll see. The other one I wondered about is it worthwhile continuing to talk about our healthcare situation with our hospital? I mean, it's not that they haven't heard, but maybe if we keep talking, it might be worthwhile. Maybe we'll know something else before Roma rolls around, but based on our judicial review, but we'll see. So I think it might be worthwhile having a discussion with that one also. Thank you.
Consensus on that? Okay. Yes, I think it is. Anything else? Anybody can think of? What's the final date for applications on those? December? November 27th. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Do we have anything that comes up? Making the request is the easy part. Getting ministry staff to accept it and then getting a minister in front of us. That seems to be the more difficult part, especially when it comes to the Ministry of Health. There seems to be an avoidance. Okay. Jamie? Yes, procedural. What have you got?
Through your Mayor Eccles, I have that in consideration of correspondence received from the Rural Ontario Municipal Association, Roma, respecting call for delegation requests for the 2025 Roma Conference. Council directs staff to submit delegation requests with the Ministry of Transportation regarding lighted intersections and crosswalks on the connecting link, Ministry of Infrastructure regarding additional funding for infrastructure, and Ministry of Health regarding rural healthcare.
Good with that? That is a motion. We've got it now. Does anyone want to move that motion? Thank you, Scott, Councillor Forrester, and Councillor Hutchison. Any further questions or comments on the motion? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. We'll then need a motion for the rest of the correspondence to receive for information, unless somebody's got one that they want to pull. Michael. They just keep looking this way. It's going so well. Councillor Hutchison, Doug, please.
I don't know if we need to pull it or not, but I'd like to make a statement about the multi-municipal energy working group, the report that was in there about chasing the wind. Do we need to pull a report? Maybe there'll be some discussion. I don't know.
Well, if you're just going to talk about it, go ahead.
Okay. So let me just find a spot. Oh, sorry. Did we skip over number one about the Prime Minister's awards? That's
No,
different
they're all
than,
in the whole package. here.
Okay, okay,
So
they're
if you
separated
want it-
here. I
if
just
you want to
wondered.
Talk about that one, then we'll pull it as well.
all right, okay. I just had a suggestion with that one. I just wondered if that one, if it was worthwhile communicating with the schools. I don't know if the schools would get that, that information also, but I think as far as picking someone from the education, area, it would be easier coming from the schools rather than say from us. So I don't know, is that something we can forward to them if they don't already have it?
Amy?
Through your miracles, this was just posted on our council agenda more so for general awareness of it. It's not that West Grey specifically has to nominate. It was just getting it out there in the public so that everyone in the public was aware of it. But certainly we could communicate that with the schools in the area as well. So they've got it and are aware of it.
Right, okay. Right, thank you. And then the other one had to do with the wind. Let me just get my spot here, so. Sorry. Lost my spot here. Lost my link here. Anyways, basically what, as I read this, and I think it was, I'm going to page 58 here. So let me find what, maybe I got it here. My concern with the whole windmill thing, as you know, there's a lot of talk and resistance in the past. A lot of it had to do with how the government went about bringing windmills to our area. But when I read this report, that the thing that bothers me the most is that we're supporting windmill production or wind energy production to the tune of 7.3 million per year. And that was I found that really sort of surprising that there's that much public support going into windmill generation, especially when we know that wind is one of those energy sources that only produces when the wind blows. And if the wind's blowing and we have all kinds of energy on the grid, then we end up selling that energy to the States or Quebec or whatever. So I think in the report, it talked about $150 per kilowatt hour is what they're being paid now. And ideally going forward, it should be more like $46 per kilowatt hour that they're being paid. So when it comes to future contracts, and obviously there's a lot of talk about windmills in the future, that there may be more of them. I hope that going forward that it doesn't become a big subsidy for the public rather than being funded by private enterprise. So there was a statement on page 58. The overall experience of wind generation in Ontario over the last 20 years has been that costs have far exceeded the benefits. Our hope is that this and other research contributions will provide the type of forward-looking guidance to ensure that any future wind development in Ontario is in the public interest. So in other words, not having to fund it so much. So there's lots of discussion about going forward. There's other forms of energy that they're looking at, whether it's battery backup or solar or whatever. But you know, we also know that nuclear and gas are two big producers of our energy for our grid. So just thought it was interesting, just food for thought that this may be coming forward again another time, this option to use wind. So something to keep in mind. Thank you.
And just for clarification, Doug, you did say it was about $7 million a year that the subsidy is? You're a little off on that. Yes. Yeah, it's not an M, it's a B.
Oh, billion. Okay. Well, I had a note there. I lost my note. Sorry.
Yeah. Yeah.
7 billion.
7 point. According to this report,
Yeah, sure.
not, you know, that it's that much. A lot of food for thought in there for sure. See how they're working. Okay. Any other comments on the correspondence? Have someone pass a motion to receive correspondence as presented? Are you gonna move that? Yeah, thank you. Seconder? Deputy Mayor Hutchison? Other questions? All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. All right, I think that brings us down to staff reports. Not mistaken, what are we starting with? Yeah, Manager of Planning and Development. That was well planned. You see how he, just said it was him and he just walked through the door right on time. Good morning, Mr. Smith. And your report is up on the Rosette subdivision agreement. Yes, best way to put it. Anything further you'd like to say on it other than what's in the report?
No. The report is quite extensive. Public meeting was held by Westgrade to hear the subdivision in conjunction with the County of Grey last year or so. The zoning is ready to go. We've been working through multiple issues and processes with not just this development, but one across the road that we refer to as Kahani for servicing. And we believe that all the issues overall have been resolved, and we're bringing forward the zoning bylaw for your consideration today. And the County of Grey will be is in the process of finalizing conditions of draft approval for the subdivision Therefore, based on the report, number one, we do recommend that pursuant to section 3417 of the Act, that no further public notice is required in respect of the proposed zoning bylaw amendment. And two, that staff bring forward the bylaws prepared and draft in your report for consideration by council. I'll speak to number one just for a minute. The subdivision that went to the public meeting is essentially 99% the same as what you're seeing here. That's why we don't believe any further notice is required. The 1% difference is that we also are allowing for single family homes within the development, not just townhouses. So we didn't think that was obviously not an increase in density or anywhere else like that. And the remainder of it remains the same from the initial public meeting discussion with council. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, David. Any questions on the report? Start with Councillor Townsend first. Go ahead.
Question may be more of a concern than a question. One of the items in there has to deal with the helipad at the hospital. And the hospital at this point says that they don't have a problem with, the proposal, what's going on and everything. But it says that they would need an engineer's report and change their flight path and know that they could do that. My concern is that, not that I don't trust the hospital CAO and the board, but I don't trust the hospital CAO and the board. Would they come out and say, oh, well, no, you can't use that helipad, or we can't access the helipad at the hospital? Will that be another blow to our local hospital? Could that be looked at and rectified before the building is done? I don't know. It just gives me a funny feeling it would be another way for them to put it to us. I don't know. Just a thought.
Anybody want to make an answer to that, or any staff member want to comment? And Mr. Smith, you've turned on your microphone.
So we have looked at the
Please.
helipad in a number of different ways. So first of all, we remind ourselves that a helipad is not a landing strip. It has more than one ways of coming into access. Don't get me wrong. I believe every pilot likes to come in with a head into the wind, and that's why we have a windsock at the helipad and so on and so forth. But there are multiple directions to come into a helipad, and also the ability to vertically land and take off, as opposed to having to have a different type of flight path. So in that regard, we believe that the helipad has a number of options. Number two is that as you can see from on the property, and even as you drive over there, the apartment building is actually lower in elevation. When we took the difference in elevation, and even if we did do a little bit of grading down below, we believe that the three-floor apartment building would actually only sticks up 1 story above the ground if you go up to the next level, which is the same height as the hospital building itself. So height-wise, we're not adding 3 stories, if you know what I mean, next to a helipad. The trees also on the west side of the hospital property provide already some degree of obstruction to an approach from the west side. So overall, when we took a look at it, we were far enough back and lower in elevation, and the ability of I guess you could say, a good pilot to come in and use the existing helipad we think is still there.
And Councillor Hutchison. Doug?
Yeah, so a couple questions. So one of them talks about water and sewers, that there's ample capacity to deal with this development. I'm curious, is where in the list does it fit? Like, given that we have Park Street going on now, and we have proposed one in Sadler Street, is this becoming as number 3? Like, my concern is we get all these projects on the go, and all of a sudden somebody says, well, wait a minute, we don't have enough water and sewers. So right now we're saying we have enough water and sewers based on what time frame, what timeline?
So separates water and sewer. There's never been a sewer problem capacity wise in West Grey. We have some pipe problems, as in size of pipes in cases. We have some junction, if I can call it that, where pipes come together, we're adding flow, and that's a bigger picture kind of problem than the sewage treatment plant itself. So there are no capacity issues on sanitary, which moves us back to the water, as you mentioned, and been an ongoing discussion for a while now. So council has approved, and it's in the works now, is the new well and so on and so forth that is coming online. And that's not a 5-year program. That is a number of months, I guess you could say, program to bring that well online, which gives us capacity in the near term. Not something that we're looking again to for 5 years out. So that capacity is coming online. Number 3 is that when we have been looking at some of our older subdivisions that have been extremely slow in their development, and we had allocated water capacity for the entire development on one of these subdivisions a number of years ago. We've quote unquote clawed some of that back and made it available in a generic sense to overall. So the director of the CBO has taken a look with that, with the director of public works, and between the clawback and a constant reevaluation of what we're actually using, that there is enough for quote unquote everybody at the present time, even without bringing the new well online.
Okay.
We will actually have a better understanding, because at the beginning of every calendar year, Jeff, together with our engineering consultant, do a more wholesome look at the numbers to see where we are, as opposed to running total during the year. So we'll have a better look next year. But at the moment, we're satisfied that we have enough capacity, and considering the rate of uptake in terms of development. For example, if you go to Sunvale, it's still being built even in the second phase. We haven't even started in Bruce, kind of thing. So they're not all coming online, in our opinion, at once either.
Good, thank you. The other question having to do with sewers. Apparently this development has to have a pumping station, correct? I'm curious about where that sewer connect may be. Like, to me, it makes sense almost to come off the southeast corner and use that parkland to access to George Street. Is that a possibility, or do we know the plan in terms of the sewer direction?
Yeah, we do have the plan. It had to be submitted on the front end for review. So it's interesting that all the sewerage in the development will flow to the north. The pumping station is that actually borders on the county roadway. Then it's actually pumped by force main south, and then I'm trying to get the right street, but it doesn't go down the block that we're talking about. It goes over and joins together with an existing force main overall. So that engineering work has been done and reviewed in terms of its initial draft to make sure it works.
Okay.
So
probably Chester Street, is it the one by the hospital?
probably, yeah, I think
ties
it
in
goes
there?
up and then south down. Yeah.
I had one other question, had to do with the access to Highway 4, County Road 4, I guess it is. They talk about, until the access was available, they would access off of Chester Street for construction and so on. And there was a question about that. I'm just curious, to me, it makes sense that the sooner we can get it connected to Highway 4, the better. And then you have all your construction coming off of the County Road 4 rather than coming through the subdivision by the hospital. So I'm not sure why there would be such a delay, and given, we have a good relationship with the county and whatnot, and we're putting entrances in for our police station and hospital or ambulance bay. So I'm not sure why that might be a factor, but anyways, it did state that. So
Yeah, the phasing is going to be interesting in terms of how to get into the property. First of all, county concerns with traffic management, trucks, dirt, and all the rest of it onto a county roadway. And of course, as you mentioned too, people don't like trucks through their existing neighborhoods and so on and so forth. So we're not sure yet. There's no doubt that I think in some respects we're going to have to use Chester for a bit, considering where water mains and everything else need to go. So we don't know really yet. The developer wants to start at the north end. They'll start at the north end. If they want to start at the south end and move north, then I'm not quite sure yet about that, other than to make council aware of that. We may need to use one or two or whatever it is at the same time. And the county does, of course, retain some control over construction traffic onto its county roadway through a 60-kilometer zone, and with the dirt and mud, et cetera, that's going on there too, that nobody wants that, but so.
Any other questions? Just when it comes to the force main and the sewer, and I guess just for efficiencies, has there been the conversation with the developers on the north side of the road, if they're putting a force main in and whatnot? It may have capacity for both, or
Right. So I know just enough about the engineering to be dangerous here. Okay. So Jeff isn't here. So, we got a couple of things going on. Number one is the size of a sewage pumping station itself, pump wise. We believe that can be kind of phased or done in multiple sections, as in we don't need to put in a single pump for everything. We may be able to do multiple pumps, which has a cost savings. But the pipe that's going to go in the ground may need to be sized on the front end to take into consideration a north side of the highway and a south side, because we want to do the pipe size only once. So some of that is probably going to have to be engineered upsized. And if the north side never happens, well, you have an upsized pipe. If the north side does happen, then we've sized, quote unquote, accordingly. We may even need to take a look a little bit further than that, because in the sense of doing some long range planning, is that if we begin to develop Durham to the north of our current boundary, up Highway 6 on the west side, then sometimes the most logical spot for water and sewer to run may actually be through that. And that requires a little bit of long range planning, which then talks to the size of pipes and so on and so forth, all the way from the north end of the city or town, all the way down to the sewage treatment plant. And we haven't done that yet. But right now, we believe the sewage treatment plant can be phased in terms of size, but the underground piping is probably going to need to be sized on the front end for both what we call the Kahani and the Rosette, because we only want to go on the ground once.
as long as it's being under consideration, I think that's the best. I was pretty sure it would be. One more question, Mr. Hutchison. You can turn on your microphone anytime.
On page 79, it talks about the parkland. So the block 14 that we're accepting some parkland, which is approximately 49% of the 5% parkland required under the Planning Act, which is fine. And then it sounds like the rest will be in cash in lieu of parkland. But then it goes on to say, Westbury recommend that the remainder of block 14, approximately 60,000 meters squared, be transferred to Westbury as general open space or natural environment. So does that mean that's in place of the cash, or is that on top of the 5% plus, or sorry, the 49% plus 51% cash? Then they're also asking to give us some open space and natural environment. I'm not sure clear on that.
Yeah. So the West Grade for parkland doesn't take at the moment parkland that we can't use. And part of that block that you just mentioned is unusable land of no use to the developer either. So we would accept the land, but only as land, not as parkland, which is why the block is kind of split in this concept. Part of it is usable for parkland, and we'll take some of it, and the other part we'll take because they would like to get rid of it probably, but we're only taking it as ownership land, and that's where we're getting the split.
Anything else on this? Seeing nothing. I believe that there is a resolution there, or a recommendation. My apologies. Someone to move the recommendation. Deputy Mayor, thank you, Tom. Seconder. Councillor Shea. Jeff. Any further questions? At the zoning for the Rosette, go forward for the bylaw. Seeing none, call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Now I believe we're down to the Director of Legislative Services. And a council calendar. Jamie.
Thank you, Mayor Eccles. This is an annual report that I bring forward for council's consideration. The 2025 council meeting calendar largely follows the same schedule as the 2024 calendar. Council meetings are generally held on the first and third Tuesdays monthly, with committee of adjustment hearings being scheduled for the afternoon of the first Tuesday of the month and public meetings being scheduled for the afternoon of the second Tuesday of the month. One thing to note with this calendar is that you will see that there's a slight variation with the way budget dates are set for 2025, with the first one being on June 24th, 2025, and the remainder being in October and November of the year. The rationale behind that is to start the capital budget process earlier in the year, which may provide some benefits in terms of early tenders that we may be able to get out subject to budget approval, of course, but it just allows us to have that more fulsome conversation earlier in the year and then finish the budget process later in the year. So barring no questions, there is a recommendation that council approve the 2025 calendar as presented in the report, but if there are questions, I'm happy to take those.
Just one, if I could, from the chair. Public meetings on the second Tuesday. Is that really the third Tuesday? For council?
Yes, second meeting.
Yeah.
Apologies.
Just for clarity. Exactly what you were meaning, just the way it was there. It's for the third Tuesday. Second meeting. Anything else on that calendar? I guess the only thing that's really, as Jamie had said, was that that early budget meeting. Carrie wants to do that before she goes on summer break, so that's why it's at the end of June. Correct, Carrie? Yeah, just no comments necessary. Okay. Then there is a recommendation to accept that calendar and get it up and posted. If anybody would like to move that? Councillor Noon and Councillor Shea. Thank you, Joyce. Jeff? Any questions on the recommendation? Call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Thank you. The second one, Jamie. You're up next. Again.
Thank you, Mayor Eccles. This is a much more exciting report than the calendar, so happy to be presenting this one to you today. West Grey is undertaking a brand refresh to modernize our existing brand. The refreshed West Grey brand is in keeping with the existing branding, and the color palette of the refreshed brand was inspired by photographs and imagery from across West Grey that reflected community assets and values. The new logo font is easier to read from an accessibility perspective than the cursive current font that we have, and this brand refresh aligns with the goals and objectives of the 2024 to 2026 strategic plan. And I do have contained within my report a presentation, so Ashley, if you wouldn't mind bringing that up. And while she's doing that, before I get started into the presentation, I just want to take a moment to thank Ashley for her tremendous work on this brand refresh initiative. She's very passionate about design, and it shows in the tremendous job she has done in putting this refreshed brand together. So thank you, Ashley. Excellent. Thank you. So a municipal brand is more than just a logo or a slogan. It's a collective image and perception of a municipality by its stakeholders. It encapsulates the municipality's identity, including history, culture, service, and future vision. Go to the next slide. Thank you. West Grey is rich in history and heritage with a deep sense of pride, tradition, and culture. Today, our towns and villages resonate with the vibrancy of community, commerce, and social energy, setting the stage for a bright future. The communities in West Grey have a long and proud history of industry and commerce. And the refreshed color palette, the brown hue represents the earthy tones of the rich farmland that can be found throughout West Grey. It symbolizes stability, reliability, and the hardworking spirit of the community. The municipality of West Grey has utilized the tagline nestled in nature for many years, which embodies the abundance of opportunities that are rooted in nature and shape the essence of the community. The green hue symbolizes the abundant natural beauty that West Grey is so fortunate to have. It represents growth, renewal, reflecting the landscape that offers a sense of peace. The gray hue represents strength and resilience of West Grey. It symbolizes the solid foundation of the community, reflecting its rich history and enduring spirit. The blue hue represents trust and reliability, which are key components of West Grey's community. The strong bonds among residents foster a supportive environment where businesses and individuals work together to create a welcoming atmosphere. And then on this slide, you can just see all the colors together with similar items that I had just mentioned in the previous slide. And then on the next slide is a collage of photos that were taken from across West Grey that are where these colors were derived from. So you can see in each of them hues and tones from each of these colors that are before you. And then on the next few slides, it just provides an overview of the fonts that were chosen in the brand refresh, along with the rationale for each. The Broadshed LDO font is used in the logo for the words West Grey in the refresh brand. It is designed for clarity, making it easy to read both in print and on digital platforms. I think you're a little bit ahead of me there, Ashley, but that's okay. I'm on Highway font now, which is page 13. Next slide. There you go. Thank you. So this font is used adjacent to the logo wordmark as a companion to the core West Grey graphic for the words municipality of, for all corporate and legal correspondence. In the tagline, nestled in nature, or where the logo wordmark includes the names of the individual communities, specifically Ayton, Durham, Elmwood, and Newstead. The Highway font complements our branding by reinforcing a sense of belonging, modernity, and approachability, helping us engage effectively with both residents and visitors. The Arial font is one of the most commonly used typefaces, making it familiar and easily recognizable to our community members. This font is the primary font type for administrative purposes in reports and public communications. Open Sans is designed for excellent legibility, both on screen and in print, and will primarily be used for communications across West Grey's social media channels. And on the screen, you can see the previous iteration of the logo that was derived in 2000, along with the current logo that we have at the present time. And then on the next slide, we'll get into the proposed refresh logo. So throughout the refresh, the goal was to maintain the feel of the current West Grey branding in a more modern way. The inspiration for the West Grey brand refresh was derived from wanting to pay homage to the existing logo and from comments from the public and council on wanting more color to be introduced into the branding. So in the next few slides, it's just the logo in different forms, be it stacked or horizontal. And both corporate and consumer facing. So some of the iterations have municipality of at the top with nestled in nature at the bottom. Others don't, just depending on where they're going to be used. We would interchange them based on the format. Keep going. And then you can see it in black and white. As many things are printed in black and white, it's still important to have that black and display what that would look like on print if it were to be printed in the absence of color. And then just some examples of how it would be used on communications tools. And then in the next few slides, you can just see larger the colors for blue, gray, green, and brown, copper. Yes, thank you. And then again, we've got some more examples of how it would be used sort of every day within the municipality. So there's an example of a media release and what that would look like. There's some branding, some examples of some merchandise, sweaters, bags, things like that. and then how it would be used in infrastructure and community centers. So the idea would be that it would say Municipality of West Grey, and then underneath it would show the town specific. So Ayton, Durham, Elmwood, Newstead. And then after that, we have an example of some business cards, and then how each of the colors would be used within our social media platforms. So the rationale being that green is for media releases, blue is for general municipal communications, the copper is for community, and then the gray is for council. And the rationale with this too is that it is largely just a brand refresh. We didn't want to reinvent the wheel because there is so much to enjoy with what the West Grey logo currently is. So as I had noted in the presentation, this is largely derived from that. Moving forward, should council approve this refreshed brand, the idea would be to organically and naturally replace things as they reach their end of life. So there will be little cost upfront to implement this refreshed brand. And as I had mentioned, as we go forth and replace things like banners, signs on buildings, we would implement the new brand. One of the things in the strat plan is wayfinding signage, and this refreshed brand comes at a crucial time. If we're looking at replacing some of those signs in our communities, now would be an excellent time to do that. In addition, the West Grey website is currently being refreshed. So in keeping with the timing of that too, should council elect to proceed with the refreshed brand, it would allow us to implement that into the new website design at no extra cost. If we were to do it later, there would be an additional charge with that. So the recommendation in the report is that council approves the attached West Grey brand refresh as presented and directs staff to bring forward a bylaw to repeal bylaw 52/2020, the West Grey Communication Strategy bylaw. And with that, Mayor Eccles, I am happy to take any questions that you may have.
I've got a lot of questions, but you don't want to ask me, so I won't give them right now. Open. Councillor Hutchison, Doug.
Yeah, thanks, Jamie. So looks good. I just had a couple of thoughts and maybe questions. Not sure if you're open to make changes or whatever, but I do like the horizontal version better than the stacked version. To me, the stacked version, I don't know, just there's something funny about it that I don't care for, but even if they were offset, I think it would be better. The one word versus the other, like West Grey and then Western Grey, but that's just my thoughts. The other question I had was, or thought was when you're talking about the different areas, look like, I don't, are these colors that you've got for each area, like Durham, Ayton, Elmwood, and Newstead, are those the colors you're going to use when we're using something within the towns? And if so, is there any way that Durham's could be blue, since blue has always been a historical color that Durham has used?
Jamie, please answer that one.
Thoughts?
Thank you for the question. So I'll speak to the stacked versus horizontal first. So depending on the location of the logo will dictate which version we use. So in some formats, stacked would be more appropriate, and in other formats, horizontal would be more appropriate. So it's really case dependent with respect to that. With respect to the colors, the intent is not that each community have its own color. It's a collective color for West Grey. So there's just versions of the logo. The intent is not to brand one community with one color, because what we're trying to foster here is a general sense of community collectively, as opposed to segregating each of the communities based on color. Specific, yes, that was brought up in one of the conversations that we had, is that Durham's color was historically blue, but we're looking broader than that and looking at West Grey as a whole and looking at colors based on the entire municipality rather than community specific.
So any logos that were produced, say, within Durham aren't necessarily going to be just the color that's on the screen here. They could be any color of those four colors. Is that correct?
That is correct, yes.
Okay, all right.
Tom, Deputy Mayor Hutchison.
Mayor Eccles, and through you to Clerk Eccleswater. So just if it was selected that we went with the nestled in nature logo, and then when you roll down to, excuse me, real quick as I can, to the infrastructure and community centers where you drop that out and then put, you know, the actual towns that it's in, is that a conflict, or is that, you know what I mean? We're dropping out a consistent local across and then we eliminate that. Thanks.
And thank you for the question, and that's a good question. So not everything that has the West Gray logo on it will have the tagline nestled in nature. It, much like the comment that I made to Councillor Hutchinson's question, it will be dependent on where we're using it. So for the more corporate legal communications, we wouldn't include that community facing consumer brand with the nestled in nature. It would just be the municipality of West Gray. So I don't see there being a conflict with dropping the nestled in nature for some of those infrastructure things where we do want to make it known that you're in Ayton or you're in Newstead or Durham or things like that. So again, it's very case specific.
I appreciate that. I guess we could emphasize that on each one of the entrances to each town on the signs, is just use that as our nestled in nature on each one, and then it's identified across the board. But no, I appreciate it. So I just had to understanding how that was going. Perfect.
Further, Jeffrey? Councillor Shea.
Thank you. Yeah, good work, team. Is this a trend in municipal branding to have logos that feature nothing other than text?
Through your remarks to Councillor Shea, I can't speak to that specifically. What I have noticed when we did look at a large chunk of municipal logos, many of them didn't have imagery. It was just the text, it was the color. That holds and holds through the test of time more so than an image that may fade as time goes by. Certain imagery looks great now, but you fast forward 15, 20 years, and I'm thinking back to all the municipalities that had a previous logo with imagery that they've since changed or removed because it was no longer relevant. So the idea with this is that we build something and create the brand refresh so that it would stand the test of time.
So when I look at the sample of the media release and there was another sample of the notice, the logo, so to me, it feels like it sort of disappears. Like in the media release, the word media release is a big, bold font, and West Gray beside it is a little bigger, but less bold. And it just seems like these are two words on one side of the page and these are two words on the other side of the page. I'm not really getting a sense of logo here. It just seems like text on a page.
And thank you for the question. So this is just for illustrative purposes. It's not going to necessarily look specifically like this with media release being the same size as West Gray. But I would also bring you to the current logo as it is now. When we do a media release, it just says the stylistic West Gray. So it's not worldly different than what you're seeing now. It's just laid out a little bit differently.
Go ahead.
Thank you so much. And if I can just add to that, we have had some comments actually from communications groups about the fact that they like the fact that our existing logo is simply what I would call a word mark. And to call this a logo is probably a bit of a stretch. I don't think it's ever been a logo. It's been an identifying word mark. And if we want to lean into the strength of West Gray as a whole, we did an environmental scan. Ashley pulled it all together for us, but looked at a myriad of logos. And it was very interesting how they really didn't stand out there. You know, most of them had the river and hills and maybe a sun or a wheat sheaf or a streetscape somehow. And we thought, well, we could argue that all of rural Ontario has similar things. So let's just be bold. We've been using the West Gray word mark for years. Let's just continue to lean into that strength of the name and sort of jazzing it up with color and giving us other opportunities, having ways to add in a tagline when required, or the municipality for more corporate correspondence. But it was quite intentional. But to your point, Councillor Shea, I think calling it a logo, it's I think traditionally what everybody calls it, but it's really more of a word mark as our emblem.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. Maybe it's my eyes or I'm not wearing my glasses, but I do find on a lot of these samples that I'm looking at, the nestled in nature is too small to read. It just looks like an underline, which is fine. I understand that's part of its purpose. And I also understand that you're not going to use it all the time. I also wondered if how often municipality of would be required, because it also seems a little bit superfluous. So I understand there's samples here that have both of those left out. So I'm just stating opinions. And you, isn't there an expression about everyone having an opinion? So I don't really have to dwell on these, but the one that I really wanted to ask about was the one that has the community names underneath. They're really hard to read. You know, it took me a couple of times scrolling through this document. I assumed it said nestled in nature, and I really had to direct my attention to realize that that was the community name. And the reason I'm asking this question is because you mentioned signage and entrance signs. I assume the entrance to Durham is not going to say, "Welcome to West Grey," in little tiny writing underneath Durham. I assume the entrance to Durham is going to say, "Welcome to Durham," part of West Grey. So do the communities need to have some sort of branding thought put into them as well?
Thank you for that question. Thank you for pointing that out. I think, you know, we look at this for so long and we see it the way we see it. So the feedback about the sizing is welcome. So thank you for that. With respect to the question about signs and communities, one of the things that I have noticed in my travels is when you go to certain municipalities, and I'll use two examples, one being Clearview, the other being the town of Minto. When you enter those municipalities, what you see on their sign is "Welcome to Minto" in large print, and then within that you can see the name of the town that you're in being Clifford. So it connects the place to the municipality as a whole. So you're not just looking at Clifford, you're looking at Minto. With Clearview, the same thing. So when you go to some of the municipalities there, you're entering Duntroon, you can see Clearview, very large and prominent, but also Duntroon. So it's making sure that your signage represents your community as a whole, in addition to the entire municipality. So there's been no firm decision made on wayfinding signage, but just to put that into perspective a little bit, it is important to have both West Grey and the town or community that you're in on those signs.
Joyce, please. Oh, Michelle wants to jump in before you, Joyce. Sorry,
Yes.
you're cut off.
Sorry,
Madam
thank you.
CEO.
I just wanted to speak to the community names as well. I do agree that the scaling of the size on that lower letter, we could absolutely look at the scaling of that because I think it is important. To follow up on Jamie's comment related to leading with the municipality broadly and having the communities embedded within the larger municipality. There has been a lot of conversation in municipal world about those things. We're trying to create, you know, the intent of that, whether it would be here or elsewhere, is that, you know, the larger entity is still, we are all still one community. And I think historically we're hearing in some communities still struggling with divide from pre-amalgamation. And while we want to respect, and I think it was embedded in the narrative throughout this branding, we want to respect where we came from. So we don't ever want to lose sight of our individual communities, but we also don't want to foster competition between the communities. We are still all West Grey, and that was the intent around the respect, but also how we move forward with the collective brand.
Councilor.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation. I love it. Just going back to your signage. So now once the branding is approved, so on the signs would be then designed according to how like the municipality West Grey, like Ayton or Durham or Newstead, whatever, would be part of that sign then for the entrance signs. The boundaries of West Grey would just reflect municipality of West Gray. And so it's more just the fonts on those signs and nothing more, because like you said, we're not bringing in rivers or, you know, that sort of thing. So it's just basically what we see would be on those signs then.
Thank you. And I know we have, in our discussions, we have allocated some money in 2025 towards new gateway signage. Some of the way we'll be able to actually imbue some further character to that might be on the textures of the signs or the materials that the signs are made of. And for illustrative purposes, this is where, you know, the brand refresh is proposed. But there may be, and I think Jamie mentioned it, for the gateway signage, when we get into that, instead of municipality of West Gray, it might say, using the same font and structure, welcome to West Gray, Ayton, welcome to West Gray, Newstead. And it might even have a subline underneath, established 18, whatever year it was, to start to still reflect on the heritage and the integrity of those communities and where they came from, but welcoming everybody into the broader West Gray. But those would come forward as we get ready to do gateway signage.
It'll just be little brackets, you know. Eaton, 1872, West Gray, 1999. I think. No. We did 2 amalgamations. Wants to get us back onto it. Okay, fine. Councillor Hutchison, please.
I know we're not deciding on the gateway signs at this time, but just a thought, as we look at this and I drive around, seems to me I see a lot of towns that says, welcome to a part of West Gray. So it's sort of flipped what you're talking about. So I would like to investigate more before we make that decision. But anyways, just that comes to mind when I see that.
Through Miracles, thank you for that. This is largely just foundational. When we get to wayfinding signage, we'll likely bring something back before council again, to seek your opinion and approval on how to move forward with that. So first is the foundation of all of that, and then we can get into those conversations when the time comes.
Okay. Good discussion. Anything else? There is. Oh.
Thank you, Mayor Eccles, and yeah, thank you. I think it's long overdue, and I think it's very professional. I do like just the standard letters, and I'd be more than happy to move the recommendation as put forward in our report under number 1 and number 2. Thank you.
Okay. Moved by Deputy Mayor Hutchison. Recommendations in the report as presented, seconded by Councillor Noon. Any further questions, comments on that? Councillor Noon, Joyce?
So then I take it eventually the flags that are used in the towns would be replaced with the new branding as well.
Through Miracles, yes, that is correct.
Okay. Anything else? I guess the biggest, if I could, well, I am. Not that I could, I am going to speak from the chair. Thank you to Ashley. I think this is a tremendous use of her staff. This isn't new information, and it's not a radical deviation from my thought process. Using our staff and the expertise of our staff more often, we've got to encourage that. Ashley is great at communications. She put this together. Thank you very much. And you saved us from using a consultant, which probably, I'm not even going to guess what the figure was. And I think it's just wonderful. and for the rest of the staff to be able to use that. And empowering us to use the skills we have and the positivity and confidence to do that. So I certainly do struggle using consultants out there because they are smarter than we are, and no, they're not. They're not. They should be coming to us and using Ashley when it comes to rebranding. So thank you for allowing me to say that. Thank you, Ashley, for this, putting it together. Anything else? Call the question then on the motion on the floor. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. Thank you. All right. That's it for staff reports. Jamie, I guess we're down to bylaws. Oh, sorry. Jumping ahead here. Back up to the questions. Any council members have any questions today? Councillor Townsend. Doug?
Thank you. And maybe not really a question, more of just a follow-up. I know something we had talked about with the electronic signaling devices crossing. I had the pleasure of being on the road bright and early yesterday, going to Cambridge, and went down through Mount Forest and Arthur, where they have automated crossings. And yes, they still have crossing guards at the automated crossings. So just follow up while it's fresh in my mind.
All right, thank you. Not to say whether it's right or wrong, but that's the way they do it. Anybody else? Any questions? Seeing none, then we're down to bylaws. We have 3 bylaws there. We'll take a motion to move those 3 bylaws. 1, confirming bylaw, 1, change of name bylaw, and 2, the sale of lands. Basically municipal road allowances. Councillor Forrester moves that the 3 bylaws be moved. Councillor Townsend. Any questions or comments on the motion? Call the question. All those in favor? Opposed? That is carried. All right. Any new business? Any announcements? Tom, go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor Eccles. I just want to remind the community and those listening that Saturday, December the 14th is the Toronto Maple Leaf Alumni Game in Durham. It's a fundraiser for our school boards for healthy Christmas hampers. Tickets are still available. If you want to know how to get them, you can certainly contact me, but there's lots of information out there. So we're still looking for to move some tickets and for the ongoing support. Thank you.
Anybody else? Councillor Hodge.
Just a reminder of the upcoming Durham Bridge lighting is going to take place December 3rd at 5:30. It's a little bit earlier, and it's on a Tuesday night to accommodate West Gray's Christmas celebration. So it's on Tuesday rather than Wednesday, and it's 5:30, so it's a little earlier. Hopefully we'll have the lights up by then. And the Santa Claus parade follows on this December 7th to Saturday. I believe it's 12:30, I think, 12:30. And I'm sure there's other bridge lighting and parades coming up, but somebody else maybe has those dates and they want to share.
So, Councillor Forrester. I know you got something to say.
All right. The Village of Elmwood will be having their tree lighting on this Sunday. I believe it's at 5.
5. Yes.
All right. Thank you.
Hot chocolate and other little treats and singing and the merriment of Elmwood to kick off the festive season. Anything else? Yep. Now, just for, yes, an update to, what's that, December the Durham Parade's December 6th, 7th. Then the Newstead Parade will be the 8th. And Aiton Street Lighting is the 1st of December. At Centennial Hall or in front of the, what, at Centennial? Okay. Tree lighting time, 5, 6, 7. Lighting 6. Michelle.
Not quite as festive, but I'd like to remind everybody that our hazardous waste is reopening this Friday. They've been closed for a while, so
Okay. And at the Durham site, or is it feature out at Bendick? It is in Durham, yeah. That's what I was understanding. So it will be hazardous waste can be reported and deposited in at the Durham site, Durham landfill. Good. Any other? Okay. That's it for announcements. Before we do have a closed session, but I'm going to suggest before we go into closed session, we take a 10-minute recess for relief. All right, we'll recess and be back at 10:35. Yeah.
Closed.
Okay. All right. Okay, we'll call things back to order. And I do have a motion to go into closed session for 3 items. One, the minutes of the closed session from November 5th. One matter regarding proposed or pending disposition of land by the municipality and a position plan procedure criteria or instructions to be applied to negotiations respecting municipal property, and one matter regarding personnel matters about identifiable individuals and labor relations or employee negotiations respecting a municipal department. I have someone to move this motion to move into closed session. Councillor Noon. Did I see your hand, Councillor Townsend? Okay, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. And staff staying, Michelle and Jamie? Okay. I'll get us back on track here. Okay, welcome back. We're back from closed session. And I want to report that during closed sessions, council discussed minutes of the closed meeting, session of the regular council meeting on November the 5th, 2024, discussed one matter regarding proposed or pending disposition of land by the municipality and a position plan, procedure, criteria, or instructions to be applied to negotiations respecting municipal property, and direction was given to staff. And discussed one matter regarding personal matters about identifiable individuals and labor relations or employee negotiations respecting a municipal department, and no direction was given. Okay. That was it for closed session. I believe that we're down to the end of the agenda for today's procedures on council. We do have a follow-up planning meeting at 2 o'clock today. All right. With everything completed on the agenda, we are adjourned. See everybody back here at 2. So, anyhow.